Hare Krishna. Welcome everybody. This is Krishna Dasa. So today we continue with the 18th chapter, and today we are going to do slokas 18.29 to 18.35. And before we begin, I'll say the prayers to Guru and God. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalake Chakshurum Militamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna.
गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुर्साक्षात् परब्रह्मा तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः।
Hare Krishna. So I'll play the slokas. Again, it is 18.29 to 18.35.
बुद्धेर्भेदं धृतेश्चैव गुणतस्त्रिविधं शृणु प्रोच्यमानमशेषेण पृथक्त्वेन धनञ्जय प्रवृत्तिं च निवृत्तिं च कार्याकार्ये भयाभये बन्धं मोक्षं च या वेत्ति बुद्धिः सा पार्थ सात्विकी यया धर्ममधर्मं च कार्यं चाकार्यमेव च अयथावत् प्रजानाति बुद्धिः सा पार्थ राजसी अधर्मं धर्ममिति या मन्यते तमसा वृता सर्वार्थान् विपरीतांश्च बुद्धिः सा पार्थ तामसी धृत्या यया धारयते मनः प्राणेन्द्रियक्रियाः योगेनाव्यभिचारिण्या धृतिः सा पार्थ सात्विकी यया तु धर्मकामार्थान् धृत्या धारयते अर्जुन प्रसङ्गेन फलाकाङ्क्षी धृतिः सा पार्थ राजसी यया स्वप्नं भयं शोकं विषादं मदमेव च न विमुञ्चति दुर्मेधा धृतिः सा पार्थ तामसी.
Okay, Hare Krishna. I think it is Deepali's turn.
Hare Krishna, everyone. 18.29. Now, O Dhananjaya, Arjuna, hear from me the threefold divisions of intelligence and determination according to the three modes of nature as I explained them in full. 18.30. That intellect, O Partha, Arjuna, which knows what ought to be done and what ought not to be done, what is to be feared and what is not to be feared, and what leads to bondage and what leads to liberation, is in the mode of goodness. 18.31. That intellect which confuses righteousness and unrighteousness and cannot distinguish between proper and improper action, O Arjuna, is in the mode of passion. 18.32. That intelligence which considers irreligion to be religion and religion to be irreligion, which is covered by darkness and perverts all values, O Partha Arjuna, is in the mode of darkness. 18.33. O Arjuna, that steadfast determination which maintains unwavering control over the mind, life airs, and senses through yoga is in the mode of goodness. 18.34. But that determination by which one holds fast to religious duty, desires for pleasures and wealth, with great attachment and desire for results, O Partha, Arjuna is in the mode of passion. 18.35. That determination by which one holds on to dreaming fear, lamentation, depression, and illusion due to unintelligence, O Partha, Arjuna is in the mode of darkness. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Thank you for reading so nicely. So I know that there are a lot of people here with analytical, scientific minds who want to know things, the jnanis. So this section is again addressed to them. So in these verses, 18 about 29 to 35, now Krishna is pretty much revealing the blueprint of human consciousness. It's technical, but at the same time, it's very beautiful, and it's if you can understand it, it will be very liberating as well. But this is another gist of Sankhya philosophy for those who are interested. So Krishna here, in the previous set of slokas, Krishna spoke about karma and karta, and he said how they are also influenced by the three gunas. Now here Krishna is talking about Buddhi and Dhriti, two extremely important aspects of our human life. Why does it matter today? Because in today we have so much information overload. And even a child can pretty much, look at anything, listen anything, read anything. It's a lot of information overload. So what is important is the buddhi. The buddhi has to be purified. There has to be clarity so that people can discern what is good, what is not good, what is beneficial, what is harmful. Very, very important. Similarly, dhriti is determination, because sometimes we know what is good, but we are not able to do it. Sometimes we know what is bad, but we are not able to avoid it. Why? That is because there is a problem in the dhriti, the determination. So you see how these two fit so well into our own lives, because these are the two fundamental aspects. If we get it right, we are successful in material as well as spiritual worlds. And if we don't get it right, then we struggle in all dimensions. So Krishna starts with buddhi. Now, buddhi does not just mean intellect. No, it's a much deeper faculty of, whenever Krishna says discernment or whenever Krishna says wisdom, that is a function of this buddhi. No, it can discriminate or discern between what is true, what is false, what is reality, what is appearance, what is temporary, what is permanent. All of that questions we have, all of that is all a function of the buddhi. Now in the Katha Upanishad, it beautifully talks about the hierarchy. Now listen, it's very, very, beautiful how our ancients have figured all this out and how they have documented it so methodically, so scientifically. So Katha Upanishad, it says that beyond the senses or the objects, beyond the objects is the mind, beyond the mind is the intellect, beyond the intellect is the great Atman, beyond the great Atman is the unmanifest, beyond the unmanifest is the Purusha, and beyond the Purusha there is nothing. That is the end. See how they have tried to explain the whole hierarchy, and we will see why it is important to understand this and how we can apply this to our daily lives. It's extremely profound. So see, now we just saw how Katha Upanishad talks about things from gross to subtle to subtler to subtlest. So that is a hierarchy, which means we need to go to the subtlest. That is our goal, isn't it? Self-realization, what are you realizing? We are realizing the Atman. And beyond that, we want to become one with the divine. That is even beyond that, right? So what are the stages of this growth? How do we, how does this upward journey happen? Where does it begin? Now, if some of you have already done any kind of Shravan Manan, some of these teachings, you can actually connect it back to what Krishna has taught in the previous chapters, because each aspect has been explained in depth. Let's see. Now, how the hierarchy starts. We said the objects. So, it all starts with the outside world, isn't it? All the objects that can be seen, touched, heard, tasted, smelt. Now, isn't it very obvious? That is the obvious thing that we can see, obvious thing that we can perceive. So that is the surface level, gross level of reality, because we are running into them daily, countless such objects. The problem is for many people, for them, that is the reality. So they stop at the most gross part. So there is no growth because they consider that the material world, the material objects as the reality. And that's a problem. Why it's a problem? Because we just saw there is so much more. That is at the rock, that is at the bottom of the hierarchy. Okay. See, now let us try to understand this very categorically. Okay. Because those objects, how do we perceive them? We perceive them through the senses. What are the senses? The sense organs, the eyes, ears, nose, skin, tongue. Correct? So that is why those senses are considered to be more subtle than the objects. Why? Because how you experience those objects depends entirely on how good your senses are working. No? Isn't it very obvious? For example, say somebody has a vision problem. So when they look at a tree, the flowers may look all blurry. But is the blur in the flower? No. That blur is because of how their eyes are able to see, because there is a problem in the eyes. See, just like that, there are some people who are colorblind. So for them, everything is just black or white. But is that what the object really is? The object is not necessarily black or white. But so now you see, now doesn't matter how the object is. What matters is how your senses are. That is why in the hierarchy now the senses are higher. I hope this is making sense. If anything doesn't make sense, feel free to stop me and we can go, and explain a little more. Okay. But even the senses, they are not high enough in the hierarchy because they are built upon something which is even more subtle. What is that? That is what we have studied earlier. It is kind of a revision. That is what is called as tanamatras. What are the tanamatras? These are the qualities behind the senses. See, the eyes, is a sense organ, but the actual sight is a tanamatra. Okay, just like that. Your tongue is a sense organ, but the actual taste, the taste itself is a tanamatra. So it is even more subtle. I hope it's all making sense. Because the energy of these tanamatras is what helps the senses do their job. Okay, there are some people, they will say that I have lost my taste. Have you not come across such people? Or sometimes when you are very sick, when you have a lot of fever, we cannot taste. Our tongue is still there. But we don't say we lost my tongue. We say I lost my taste. So there is a differentiation, correct? So the object and then the senses, the sense organ that can perceive that object, and then the tanamatra, which is driving those sense organs. See how the hierarchy works, right? Now, see, that is why, if you see, our senses, how many we have? Does anybody have more than 5? Okay. Yeah, some people are elevated, they have 6 senses, but for the majority of the population, let's say we have 5 senses, right? That is why we perceive the world only in 5 dimensions. So we say that the world is made up of Panch Mahabhuta. Water, earth, air, fire, ether. Why it is 5 Mahabhutas? Because we have 5 senses. So now you begin to realize how the senses are so important in our perception of everything. See how now you understood the hierarchy till here up to tanamatras. In fact, some philosophers, they say, it's a philosophical discussion, they say that if a human had, say, 100 senses instead of 5 senses, then they would be perceiving the world in 100 different ways that we cannot even comprehend. Makes sense? Okay. Now, because the tanamatras, see, every time we go one level up, it is supposed to get one level more subtle. Subtle means that which cannot be easily perceived or seen, or so if I'm explaining to you, you have to think. When I ask you, do you lose your tongue or do you lose your taste, then it gets you thinking. Only then you come to that realization that, oh yes, there is something even higher than that. Is why it is more subtle, because it is not obvious, right? Okay. And then comes our friend, hopefully our friend, the mind. And the mind is supposed to be even more subtle than the tanmatras. Now let us do a very quick exercise to understand this concept, okay? Let's all just close our eyes for just a few seconds. Okay, just close your eyes. Now I'm going to guide your mind. I'm going to say, can you please imagine your favorite flower? Can you see it? Try to see it. Try to visualize that flower. Now let's go one step ahead. See if you can smell it. Can you feel the smell of that favorite flower? And finally, if possible, see if you can get a feel of the petals. If you touch them, how does the petals feel? Okay, beautiful. I think some of you have already got it. So now let me ask you, how many of you could see a flower? Almost everybody saw the flower. Okay, how many of you could get a smell of the flower? Wow, beautiful. And how many of you could feel the touch? Okay, it's so awesome that everybody of you was able to see it, smell it, touch it, but there is no flower. Now tell me, did that vision of the flower, your eyes were closed, but you could still see it? You could smell it, but your nose was not actually active because the flower is not in front of your nose, right? Now, how was that possible? That is why the mind is more powerful. That is why the mind is subtler than the tanmatras. It controls everything. If the mind is strong enough, you don't even need the object. The mind can perceive it still. And if the mind is very weak, even if you put the world's strongest perfume right under your nose, none of the other faculties will really work. Your senses, sense organs, tanmatras, none of them would really function if the mind is not functioning. That is why if you see, there are some people with mental health issues, their senses are fine, their sense organs are fine, everything is fine, but they just don't seem to be able to coherently figure out what's going around them, right? So the mind, very subtle and very powerful. Now, probably it makes sense why Krishna focused more on the mind. Krishna only said, withdraw your senses from the sense objects like a tortoise, if you remember. That is all he spoke. And then later on, he gave a lot of emphasis to the mind. Because if your mind is in your control, you don't have to even withdraw your senses. You have already won over your senses. That is what these Mahatmas are. That is what all these great saints are. They have gone beyond those sensory impulses. Now you understand why the mind is important. Now, why are we talking about it here? Because this mind, see, we are only talking about now perceiving a flower or a perfume or something. But what is our ultimate goal in life? To perceive that absolute. And that absolute is beyond our senses. So then what is coming into play is your mind. If our mind is not sattvic, if our mind is not refined or purified, we cannot perceive that. That is why we are going into this science of all this hierarchy and all of that. I hope that all makes sense. But the journey doesn't end there. And now comes the more interesting part. The interesting part is there is something even higher than the mind. And that is what Krishna calls as buddhi. Because the mind can have opinions, but it is the buddhi that makes decisions. It is the buddhi that makes judgments. It is the buddhi that makes conclusions. The mind is supposed to follow what the buddhi says. So, is it making sense? Now, for example, let us say you see a snake. Okay. Most of us the first reaction would be, my God, snake, danger, run. Right? But then there are a few people who will go near the snake, who will pet it, who will take it in their hands. Same object, same sense organs, same tanamatras, same mind. What is different is the intellect now, the buddhi. Because one person has a different experience and they know something different. Even today you can go read up on this on the internet. They will tell you that the snake senses your fear and it reacts accordingly. But if it cannot sense any fear, it is usually at peace. We can go into depth there also. But where does this come? Is it that one person's mind is reacting with fear while one person's mind is reacting peacefully? Is the buddhi. Because the buddhi of one person has made a conclusion that a snake is danger. a snake means bad. Whereas the buddhi of this other person has made a conclusion that a snake is harmless until you mess up. If you are calm, if you are, still, the snake will not do anything. See the function of the buddhi and why it is higher, right? Okay, now it's an interesting journey. Now, even beyond the intellect, there is something that is called as Mahat Tattva, the universal intelligence. So it is a Sankhya philosophy thing. And so this is what is in short form also called just as Mahat. So it is said that the Mahat was the first expression of creation. We have studied this in the previous chapters, where we spoke about how the manifestation itself happens. And we said that first the Mahat comes. So there is a theory, I'll just touch upon the theory. The theory says that when nothing was manifested, all the gunas were all in perfect balance and harmony. And somewhere something happens because of which the balance gets disturbed. And when the balance gets disturbed, that is when the manifestation starts to happen. And when the manifestation starts to happen, the very first thing that gets manifested is the Mahat. So in Vedanta, this Mahat is also called as Hiranyagarbha. Hiranyagarbha is the golden womb of the universe. So that is kind of, in other words, the cause of everything else that came after. I can try to explain this a little more practically so that you get the concept. Like our intellect, how can we see? It was easier to, if you can pay attention, if you can see that as we kept going more and more higher in the hierarchy, it started getting more and more difficult to completely comprehend. So when I said the object and the senses, it was easy. And then when I said senses and tanmatra, little bit of thinking, but that still made sense. The moment I said you don't lose your tongue, you lose your taste. But when you go higher, it is a little more and more difficult, right? So just like that, how do we make a connect between your intellect and the Mahat? Because we are saying Mahat is that universal intelligence, because our intellect is like a tiny spark. It's a tiny spark of that Mahat. Just like we say we are a tiny spark of that Supreme Bhagavan, our individual intellects, they are a tiny spark of that Mahat. Now, the spark is similar but not the same. Just like our Atman is similar to the Supreme, but it is not the same because the potency is different, the purity is different, the intensity, But there is something even more interesting that I want to, explain to all of you. This is probably a very, very profound teaching again. I'll first give an example, then I will come to the explanation. I'll do it ulta because I think that will make it easier to understand. So when you look at the sun's reflection in a pond, you will see that the sun doesn't look that bright because the pond water is dirty. Secondly, the pond water is moving because whenever a duck or something passes by, there are waves in the water. So how do you actually perceive the sun in the pond, the reflection? It could be dull, it could be muddy, it could be fragmented. The sun doesn't even look whole because, it looks like it is choppy. Correct? But is that the reality? No. But that is what you are seeing. I hope that's making sense. Just like that, our intellect is a reflection of that Mahat. And what this intellect perceives depends not on Mahat. It depends on how dirty this intellect is. If this intellect is muddy, if this intellect is turbulent, then it cannot reflect Mahat. That is why Krishna says Samatvam. Because if your mind is not steady, if your mind is not calm, it is like that pond water which is turbulent. And by design, our intellect is just reflecting the Mahat. So you have to make the reflecting surface clean. You have to make the reflecting surface steady. Only then you can, that is how you perceive. You see, that is the beautiful analogy. We can go, again into this in depth if you need more explanation. But right now, we can say that the cosmic intellect, which is the Mahat or Mahat Tattva, it is far above the individual intellect. But then they say that there is something even higher than this Mahat. What is higher than Mahat itself? This is what Sankhya philosophy calls as Prakriti, the primal energy. Now, this is also called as the unmanifest or avyakta. So Prakriti is that potential that gives rise to all of creation. And when it gives rise to creation, the first thing that comes is Mahat. So I hope this making sense. But then there is something which is higher than this Prakriti also, and that is Purusha. Because that Purusha is untouched, unchanging, absolute. All these concepts are very scientific, they are very profound, but they are all part of Sankhya philosophy, where Sankhya makes a differentiation. It differentiates, this is Purusha, this is Prakriti. Prakriti is not God, Purusha is God, and so on and so forth. Whereas when you go to Advaita Vedanta, we have a slightly different take on it, where we don't try to do all this Purusha and Prakriti. We say it is, the same Karanodakshi Vishnu. Basically, we say Karanodakshi Vishnu, and that sums up everything. So see, now that you have an idea of this hierarchy, I think then you can now create a map. You can create a map for your spiritual growth. See, how do you know whether you are growing? You know only when you know what is above me. Correct? Somebody says, would you like a promotion? And you think you got a promotion. Does it make sense? What do you mean, I think I got a promotion? I know promotion means what? If I'm a manager, I become a senior manager. If I'm a senior manager, I become a director. That means you know what lies above a senior manager. Only then you can aim for a promotion. If you don't even know what is the level above me, what am I aspiring for? So that is why we are understanding all of this in detail, so that now we can create a map for our own spiritual growth. Spiritual growth means what? You have to start from the gross and you have to keep going more and more to the subtle until you realize the subtlest. That is the whole path. At every step, there will be something higher. So now it may make more sense. Now we go back to Krishna's teachings in the previous chapters. Now it may make more sense why in the beginning Krishna said, first withdraw your senses from the sense objects. That was one of the original beginning teachings, like a tortoise, he said, right? Withdraw it. That is why that came first. Okay. And then you gently withdraw the awareness from the senses. That is where he spoke about Navadvare Dehi. He said, you live in a body of 9 gates, and now you need to figure out how to overcome. You see? There are no objects, but the senses are still there. The gates are still there. Correct? Then you have to then go beyond and withdraw the awareness from the senses. And then you have to go even beyond and try to understand what are those subtle impressions that are shaping the senses themselves. Bring attention to the mind. That is where he said, Bandhuratma, you remember? We said your mind can be your best friend. But how do you even comprehend that? You have to first say, okay, now I'm looking at this TV, or I'm looking at this phone, or I'm looking at something. How do I first detach? The detachment starts from detaching. Maybe you switch off the TV, or maybe you keep the phone away. Okay, but still there is some noises happening here and there. That disturbs you. The second is then have control over the tanamatra, so that the ears are still there. See, when somebody is very engrossed in something, like let us say you are watching a very favorite movie, your child may come next to you and say, Mama, I need this. This is, your ears, it is reaching your ears, but you are not still hearing. Correct? Because you are so engrossed in something else. You can consciously make that happen. That is where you are getting control over your tanmatras. But then we just saw the power of the mind. No sense, no tanmatra, but the mind can still create those images, and it can still create those smells and distractions now. Then you have to, next step, go there. And then you have to quieten your mind. You see what I'm getting at? Okay, but your mind is so agitated because your intellect has told your mind that if you hear this noise means maybe there is a fire, maybe it's a danger, maybe, you will die. So then you have to go to your intellect and tell your intellect, what is important, what is not important. For me, this meditation is important, and whatever you want to, basically your intellect has to be purified, and so on and so forth. But if your intellect is not pure, it can never make the right decisions. It can never guide the mind. Then you have to go above the intellect now. Now, how do you go above the intellect? Fix the intellect first. Make sure your intellect is sattvic. That way, the Mahat will reflect itself in the intellect. And your job is almost done at that point. And then the elevation will automatically go in autopilot mode. This is what Krishna said. I want you to do a few things. You do it properly, and the rest I will take care. See? Krishna cannot come and take your phone away from you. Krishna cannot come and switch off the TV for you. You see what I'm saying? Then Krishna has given this manual. He has said step by step how to control each of this. And if you do that, at least go till your mind and take care of your mind and then go to your intellect. In these verses, Krishna will not talk about how to purify your intellect. Once you have done that, then Krishna will come and he will take you from there. I hope this is making sense. The scriptures will say, Sa Kashta Sa Paragatihi, that is the highest point, the supreme path, the final goal. That is what every soul is searching for. The soul wants that perception. Everything else is a distraction, but if we keep ourselves busy with the distraction, that is why people are not happy. You cannot be happy. Like a child wants its mother. You can show it 100 pictures of beautiful women. You can show it, statues. You can show it idols. You can even show it few other women. It's not ever going to feel that contentment and happiness until it sees its mother. You see, otherwise, all its life, you can give it whatever you want to give it. It will be maybe, distracted for a few hours, few minutes, few days, but its quest will not end, right? Just like that, our soul wants to realize that supreme, that father, that mother. This is the science for that. After all of this, let us quickly get into the Buddhi, where Krishna speaks about how Buddhi is so important that we have. Now you all understand why Buddhi is important, hopefully, after all this explanation. Then we will go to why Krishna says the Buddhi also has to be clear. Why? Because it is only the Buddhi that can tell your mind, this is what is going to take you towards liberation. And this is what is going to take you towards bondage. That your intellect has to do. Once it has done that, then the mind takes over. Then the mind will pull you in that particular direction. So what are the key characteristics of, so how do you know whether your Buddhi is sattvic? Very important question. It cannot be from a position of pride that I am perfect, my Buddhi is perfect. So how do you know? So Krishna has given some metrics for that. Very scientific approach to this topic. First, this is all, we have already covered all of this. Now I'm connecting all the dots for you here, okay? So Krishna said, discernment. What kind of discernment? Most important discernment is swadharma. Do you understand what is your duty and what is not your duty? Is that somebody remembering this, that we spoke about this? We spoke about what is swadharma and what is paradharma. And Krishna very clearly said it is far better to perform your own duty, even if done incorrectly, versus trying to perform somebody else's dharma even perfectly, because that is a path of danger and fear. But this your intellect has to internalize. Until that doesn't happen, it will not guide your mind the correct way on what is important, what is not important. See? Second aspect, second matrix of a sattvic buddhi is the same thing. Sattvic buddhi, it should do the discernment between, we spoke about this, Shreya, Preya. Who is doing that discernment? What is Shreya and what is Preya? That is the intellect, the buddhi. Is your buddhi able to do that? Then that means your buddhi is kind of sattvic. If your buddhi is not able to do that, then we will come to that later below. Okay, and then also, this is a very important thing we spoke about earlier, where we said, the karta. The karta is tamasic if they do actions without even thinking about the consequences. You remember that? Because if you don't think about consequences, your actions may be harmful to yourself and others. Can your intellect make that discernment and tell the mind, if you do this, this will be the consequence? That means your buddhi is on the right track. So these are some of the metrics. I will give you more metrics in my notes that you can go and read. What is rajasic buddhi? Confusion. If your buddhi is predominantly rajasic, it cannot properly distinguish what is dharma, what is adharma, what is swadharma. And it is always confused between, these are the people who will always say, I just don't know what to do. If you don't know what you should do, how can anybody else know? If you are thirsty, you are supposed to drink water. I cannot drink water for you. Correct? But why is it that some people are so much in that mode of, I just don't know what to do? That is the indication of a confused buddhi, rajasic buddhi. What are some of the metrics? Very, very important metrics. We call it, it's a technical word I've used here, moral relativism. What is moral relativism is, what is right for me is wrong for you, or maybe what is right for you is wrong for me. You cannot do this, but I can do it. If I do it, it's okay, but if you do, it's not okay. This is the kind of confused buddhi. That is a symbol. If some of us have this problem, that means our buddhi is rajasic in nature. If people give us feedback many times saying, hey, but you did the same thing, but now you are telling me that it is wrong, But if you keep getting that feedback, that means your buddhi is getting into that mode of moral relativism. What is the other thing? Attachment to outcomes. Karmanyevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. But if phal is important, that is your buddhi telling your mind that the result is important. It is a buddhi that is telling the mind, you have failed because you didn't get the results. Correct? The buddhi creates all that conclusions. If that is happening to you, that means your buddhi is pretty much in rajasic mode. Now, for example, Shakuni. Shakuni's buddhi, we can call it tamasic, but we can also say it was very rajasic. Why? Because he was smart. Shakuni was smart. He could see through, other people's schemes and all of that, but he could not control. He could not control his mind. He could not tell his mind that if you do this, the consequence is not going to be, he couldn't do that. That is why his mind is rajasic. Very rajasic. Tamasic buddhi, very dangerous kind of buddhi, where it is not just confusion, but it is like malicious. That buddhi becomes malicious. So it will try to project adharma as dharma. It will try to project falsehood as truth. Delusional. For example, what are the manifestations? One, if your buddhi is glorifying harm and giving excuses, because ahimsa comes even before satya. I said ahimsa and my Alexa woke up. Okay. So ahimsa comes even before satya. But there are some people who will justify hinsa. See, that justification is a problem. There are some times when you have to use hinsa. Like if you are a soldier, we took the example. If you are a soldier and if, some people are trying to harm your country or your people, that's okay. But otherwise, in general, if you don't even think ahimsa is a virtue, there are people who will argue. And there are people who will be convinced, that hinsa is fine. So that is a tamasic buddhi because it is trying to project falsehood as truth. And it's the same kind of people who will justify blowing up other people, blowing up malls and blowing up all of that. They will justify it. If you talk to them, they will not even say it is wrong, but we had to do it. It's not even at that level. It is that what we did is right. And that is the right thing. See, that is a tamasic buddhi. And also, like I said, moral relativism for rajasic buddhi. Tamasic buddhi is moral inversion. What is a moral inversion? It does not just get confused between right and wrong. It totally reverses right and wrong. Whatever is wrong, it will justify as right. And it will give 100, reasons for that. That is an indication of tamasic buddhi. I hope none of us are a victim to that, because if we had paid attention to Krishna's teachings in the past 17 chapters, none of us should have a tamasic buddhi. Okay. So how do we purify the intellect? Now we said intellect has to be purified. Before that, Krishna has explained what does it mean if intellect is not pure. This is what we discussed now. All the metrics now. But then how do we purify? Let us say we identify some rajasic aspects of the intellect. Then how do we purify? Krishna gave a very, very simple remedy. This was way back in the 10th chapter. He said, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupa antite. He said, like, those who are constantly devoted and those who worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. That was the deeper meaning of that. What does it mean? I'll give them the understanding. He says, I will take care of purifying your intellect. That is what he said. I'll give them the buddhi. If you go back to 10th chapter and look at our notes, 10.10, you will see the wording used there was the buddhi. See how powerful his teachings are. Now they are all probably, all the dots are probably getting connected now. So that is the best way to purify the buddhi. What is the other way to say this? Bhakti yoga. Now you see how we all come to the same conclusion, that bhakti is what is going to purify the intellect. That is why you cannot know God by intellect alone. Because if the intellect is not pure, there is no way you can perceive the absolute truth. To perceive the absolute truth, first the intellect has to be purified. And how do you purify the intellect? You have to first have bhakti. You see how it goes? Okay, that's the whole thing. Then comes the next, dhriti. Dhriti is determination, dhriti is perseverance. Now, let us say you have a clear buddhi. Let us say your buddhi tells you that you have to wake up early in the morning. The buddhi tells you, the buddhi knows. But how many of us are able to follow through? The buddhi says, don't have extremely spicy food. Don't have this, don't have that. The buddhi knows. But how many of us are able to actually follow through? The buddhi says, be consistent. Buddhi says, attend these sessions regularly, participate, a satsang, this is a satsang. The buddhi knows. But how many of us are able to follow through consistently? We make excuses, we make this, that. Why? Because we lack the dhriti. And that is why Krishna said consistency is the key. Now, does it make sense? Because you know what is the right thing to do? Great. That means you have taken care of your buddhi. Now the buddhi is going towards sattva. But can you actually do it consistently? For that you need your dhriti. Now let us talk about how Krishna has classified dhriti itself. Sattvic dhriti, mastering yourself. Sattvic dhriti means you have the determination that you are using for all the right purposes. Now it is very steady. Avyabhicharini, it is kind of very steady, undeviating. Like Arjuna, when Arjuna got those divine astras and shastras, it took a lot of efforts from him. But why was he putting in that effort? It was not just for power, because at that time, Arjuna's mindset was, I need to uphold dharma. And if I have to uphold dharma, I need to make sure that I'm having an answer for the weapons that the other folks have. And that was his mindset. So that kind of dhriti is a sattvic dhriti. All the yogis who sit in meditation for a long period of time, all the bhaktas who are very consistent in their practice, all the satsang members who kind of, even if they are uncomfortable, they still make it a point to come, they still make it a point to attend. That is all dhriti only, a sattvic dhriti. So you should be feeling good about it. If you have been having that kind of sattvic dhriti, feel good about it. See, in project management, at the end of every project, we create 3 columns on the board. I think Sandeep ji may know it very well. He's a project manager. And one of the first columns, we say, what are the things that are not good? Things that we should stop doing. And what are the great things that we should do, start doing? And what are the things that we are already doing, which is nice, continue doing. So what you should stop doing, what you should start doing, and what you should continue doing. These are the 3 columns we create. And that is called as a retrospective meeting. And it is very enlightening for the whole team when they fill that 3 columns out. Just like that, what should you start doing? If you don't have dhriti, please develop dhriti. What you should continue doing? If you already have that good dhriti, if you are being consistent, be consistently consistent. So continue doing. Okay. And what is rajasic dhriti? It is the same determination, but you use that determination for attachments. You remember the story of Ashtavakra Muni, where Raja Janaka asks him, how do I get rid of attachments? And Ashtavakra Muni runs to the royal garden, he hugs a tree, and then he yells, leave me, leave me, leave me. And King Janaka is confused. He's like, what do you mean, leave me? You are the one holding the tree. He says, now you got it. What do you mean, how do I get rid of attachment? Attachment is not holding on to you. You are holding on to attachment. And why do we hold on to attachment? Because the dhriti, the rajasic dhriti, determination is there, but we are using it to hold on to all the wrong things. For example, you will see these very smart, very brilliant CEOs of companies. They are working very hard. They are working hard. There is nothing wrong in working hard. But why are they doing it? They are using a lot of determination. They are determined. But that determination is all for profit. The determination is all for attachment, status, profit, name. That is why it is a rajasic dhriti. And what is tamasic dhriti? Very important lesson here. Extremely important lesson. We have discussed this also earlier. This is the dhriti that wants to tenaciously hold on to things that are not good for us. There is a bird that made a noise and now you got annoyed. And now you are sitting and you are very angry. You are angry that, why? Why did the bird have to come right now? I was just trying to meditate. And it came, it spoiled my mood. And you go on. Okay, the bird has gone. It is already gone. Or a relative or a friend, they said something. And now you are like, how dare they say this? How could they do this? How? No. And that goes on for days. For some people, it goes on for weeks. Some people, it goes on for months. But the person who said it is already moved on. Now, this anger or this sadness, why is it impacting us? Is because we are the ones holding on to it. No? Is sadness holding on to us? Is anger holding? No, we are determined. We will not let go. We will not let go. Even if somebody comes and says, please forgive, how can I? That is dhriti. The dhriti says, how can I? I have to hold on. But hold on to what? Holding on to anger, holding on to resentment, holding on to sadness. You see, these things are very harmful to us. That is the message. The message is, depression happens not because you don't have willpower. Depression happens because you have tamasic willpower, where you are holding on to anxiety, you are holding on to fear, and you won't let go. See how powerful this lesson is. So it puts power in your hands. It is not that some magical illness called anxiety has taken over and you need a magic pill. No. As soon as you have this knowledge, all you have to do is now move up. Take that dhriti from tamas to rajas, and from rajas take it to sattva dhriti. I hope all this makes sense. Okay, the one thing to keep in mind, Krishna has also called dreaming as a tamasic. Dream itself is not tamasic. I just wanted to give a clarification. Some people have asked me this question in the past. Dreaming itself is not tamasic. The actual message there is you have to back it up with action. Because dreaming is very comfortable. And all you do is dream. There is nothing that's going to happen. So that is tamasic. And if you are having a dhriti that is attached to that, people are saying you have to go and do this, do that. You're like, no. I'm more comfortable in my couch. I'm dreaming. I'm dreaming of success. I'm dreaming of fame. You see, that is a problem. Now, how does this buddhi and dhriti, they work together? They are complementary. Because buddhi without dhriti, what happens? Just theory. At the most some jnana, but no vijnana. There is no realization because you don't have any dhriti. You have to practice. It is like everything about swimming, but you have to actually jump in the water and swim. You see, so buddhi without dhriti is just theory. And what happens if you have dhriti without buddhi? Stubbornness. My way or the highway. Whereas your way is actually going to the gutter, but you don't care. Because you have dhriti, you don't have buddhi. So that is why you cannot have either scenario. You cannot have buddhi without dhriti and you cannot have dhriti without buddhi. They both have to be there and they both have to work together. And when they both can be sattvic, then there is no stopping us from elevation. This is the whole message. So how do we go from tamas to sattva? Krishna has given a roadmap for that. He has given a roadmap on how to elevate your buddhi and dhriti from lower to higher. It's not a linear path, it is cyclical. where each step will reinforce the next step. That is how it is. So the first thing, of course, is diet and habits. We cannot really emphasize this even more. Now, probably some of you may realize the foolishness of thinking that somehow we can continue to have tamasic habits, tamasic food, or tamasic whatever, and somehow we are above everything. We are special. Krishna will somehow. So Krishna is not caring. Krishna is not getting angry that you are doing this. That's not the point. The point is there is a science. There is this complete science. It's like you want a promotion, and your manager says, if you want a promotion, these are the metrics. These are the KPIs that you have to work towards. Then you get a promotion. You are like, no, I will fool around. I will, I'll take too many leaves. I will disregard my duty. But somehow I think I'm still going to get a promotion because Krishna loves me. You see the absurdity of that kind of a mindset, right? So that is very, very important. It is comforting, but it is not the truth. So if somebody believes in that means their buddhi is not yet sattvic. So Krishna has emphasized again and again diet and habits, foods that promote longevity, intelligence, vigor, health. That is the kind of food, and they are agreeable to the heart and they are dear to those in the mode of goodness. We have already covered this. And why the habits are also so important? Because it is not that why can't I do it just once, or why can't I do binge watching just for 1 week or one. The problem is they become impressions, and those impressions get etched in your samskaras, and the sanskaras become your driving factor. So it's a cycle. That's what we just spoke about. If it can either be a positive cycle or it can be a negative cycle. One small bad habit you get into just because you are not having enough dhriti, you get into it, and you somehow think day after tomorrow I will stop doing it. If you can stop doing it, you would have stopped now. The moment our mind says that I will stop tomorrow, I will quit tomorrow, that means it is just a saboteur working. It is just, prayer working there. You are just giving into comfort. You see? If you think you can stop tomorrow, you should be able to stop now. That is the whole message. And how can you do that? Dhriti. Dhriti, that is positive. Dhriti, that is sattvic. Otherwise, what happens? Sanskaras. What you do goes edged in your sanskaras, and your sanskaras will keep forcing you to do the same thing again and again and again. Okay, that is the whole thing. What else can we do to purify our buddhi? Nishkama karma. We had an entire chapter there where Krishna spoke in depth about that. So keep that in mind. Okay. Let us talk about some modern relevance to all of us of whatever we learned. Because Krishna gave such a beautiful science of Buddhi and Dhriti. How can we apply that in our lives? I'll give some scenarios. It is not exhaustive, just something that came to mind. We can discuss more. Social media, very important, because social media is a real problem in today's world. Rajasic Buddhi, it will thrive. It will thrive on just consuming everything that comes. Doom scrolling. We just spoke about that. That is Rajasic Buddhi. There's a constant flow, and you need a sattvic buddhi to filter out that which is not required, that which is not good. Otherwise, it will take us deeper and deeper in the negative direction. Career choices, for example. A tamasic worker, they just don't want to do anything. They will not work on their self-development. They don't want to reskill. They don't want to do anything. They want to just, have a nice time, and somehow they expect growth. And if they don't get a growth, they get angry. That is an indication of a tamasic. When do we say our career choices are rajasic? If we are only focused on my status, my name, my salary, if that is the priority, it is rajasic. But if you can focus on my impact, I can have a better impact if I'm in this position, then your career choices automatically become sattvic. That is the message there. Just like that, leadership. Rajasic Dhriti helps build corporations. But Sattvic Dhriti is what helps build organizations that actually work for transformation of the society. Like Savitribai, when she said, I'm going to build schools. Today people build schools, but it is only for money. It's only for control. But there was a time when somebody said, I'm going to build a school so that I can transform this society. I can empower women. And that was leadership. That was directed by sattvic dhriti. That was not easy. It required a lot of determination, but sattvic determination. So I think that is also hopefully making sense. Some practical steps. How do we cultivate sattvic buddhi? Regular study of sacred texts. Shravan Manan Nididhyasan. Bhagavad Gita. Okay, we are hardly going to be together for 5 more weeks. But it's not end of the story. That should be the beginning for all of us. Because that is when we have to now take all the learnings and do Shravan Manan Nididhyasan. And we just spoke about mindful media consumption. That is another practical way. See, if you cannot totally turn away from, say, Facebook or turn away from Instagram, at least what you can do or you should do is you can set your preferences. You can set your filters, because it is all based on AI today. If you say, I don't like this video, and if you say it like 15, 20 times for 20 different types of videos that are not good for you, automatically your feed will adapt. And automatically you will start seeing less of those harmful ones. You see, at least that much we should start with so that we can filter what comes to us. Eventually, we should be able to avoid this information overload. And then we already discussed sattvic environment, clear, uncluttered environments. Meditation practice is very important. It has to be regular. Only when it is regular, it can create clarity. See, let us say there is okay, let me not go into details. So meditation has to be regular for it to actually purify. You cannot mop the floor. I'm mopping a little bit and then I'm walking on it. And then I'm mopping a little bit more, I'm walking on it. You're only making the house more messy and more dirty. Until you mop the entire house, you cannot step on it, step all over the places that you have already mopped. That every person knows that. Meditation is like that. One day you do meditation, it helps clean a part of your mind. But next day you take a break and you fill it up with something negative. You fill it up with some, because the universe abhors vacuum. There cannot be a vacuum. So your mind either is filled with sattvic or it is filled with garbage. Now, if you stop filling it with sattvic, then some garbage will take its place. You see, that is why that consistent practice is so important. How do you develop sattvic dhriti? Again, meditation, but consistency. Satsang, but consistently. Good habits, good diet, but consistently. You can feel it. You can feel it. Your mind will just force you. Your mind will give you so many. Your mind is a master. It's a master controller. In 10 seconds, your mind can give you 100 excuses and 100 justifications on why what you are not supposed to do is okay. But that is where we have to really use our dhriti in a positive way and don't give in to that. And the other technique is called graduated challenges. Don't try to just one fine day say, I'm going to sit and do all 16 yogasanas or all 16 pranayamas. It is going to set you up for failure. It has to be gradual. Okay, and keep a check, keep a journal, record what you are doing, how much you are doing, and then gradually take it one step. Just like that, you cannot directly, go above your mind. You have to first start from your sense objects. Once you are comfortable that I have taken care of sense objects, then go to your senses, then go to your tanamatras, then go to your mind. You see what I mean? So one fine day, if you can sit, close your eyes, and if your mind is not playing any tricks, that means you are reaching there. That means but you cannot do that now. Because we have not yet practiced how to control the senses or how to control the tanmatras. We have not yet done that, right? So if you just sit today and say, I'm going to have a samatvam, I'm going to have a calm mind, that is going to put us up for failure and we will give up. Then we will say it's not working. So go step by step. That is a very, very important technical, And maintain a journal. The journal is not old school or old fashioned. The journal is the most important practical way to keep a track. Okay. You cannot say, I will remember, because who is remembering? Your mind, but that is what you are trying to train. It's a very tricky game otherwise. if you depend on that instrument which you are trying to clean. So you need something else, and that can be as simple as a journal. Keep it. And saburi. Saburi is very important. 100 people start on this spiritual journey. Probably 2 or 3 actually progress. That is because they give up. Why do they give up? Because they are not realistic. On day 1, they are full of josh, full of enthusiasm. They are like, I will do pranayam, I will do this, I will do bhajan. But then they don't have the right expectations. They somehow think they're going to become a yogi. They don't understand there is a challenge, there are a lot of hurdles, it will all come. So that disappointment causes people to quit. Okay, so we have to have the right method, stepwise method, and we have to have saburi. Saburi means you are doing this to realize the Supreme. As long as you have the honesty, as long as you have the conviction, have the faith that the Supreme will help. Have the faith and have the saburi. But consistency, if you're not consistent, it's not going to work. There is a practical way. So again, honest self-assessment is very important. And I will again give you 2 questions. Like last time we had 3 questions. I'll give you 2 questions. Do we perceive clearly what will lead to liberation and what would lead to bondage? Because you are all in 18th chapter. So this question should be self-explanatory. You should ask that question. And if the answer is no, it means more work is required. Second question, do we have the determination now? Question 1 gave me the answer on whether it leads me to liberation. Let us say I found out it leads me to liberation, whatever I'm going to do. The second question, do I have the determination to follow through? So these 2 questions you have to ask, and the answer should be yes. If the answer to questions are not yes, ask the question again. Simple, right? Okay. And if you follow all of that, Krishna is promising that you will reach that state, which once you attain, you will never have to return. So that is the beautiful promise from Sri Krishna. I hope all of this is making sense. Hare Krishna. Really happy, and thank you for your support and love. Let me open the floor. If anybody has any questions, comments, feel free. Okay, now anybody, if you have anything, you can. Simranji, yes?
Yeah, Guruji, I was remembering that thing when you said we hold on to things that are not good to us. It's called tamasic dhriti. You had given us one story of 2 monks. They were trying to cross
Yes.
the river, and he carries the woman on her
Yes.
back, and then so that's
Yes.
how he says that it is still in your mind. You are holding on to it. I left her when we crossed the river.
Yeah, that is attachment. The mind was attached. The mind was something else. The mind was somewhere else. So, but I think in our own lives, it is more important to focus on things that make us angry, things that make us sad, and question, what is making me angry? What is making me sad? The answer will almost always be the same. It is some memory. It is some instance. It is something that we are holding on to. And we holding on to is not helping us in any way. That is the realization that has to come. Then automatically all these unwanted issues will go away. See, the example given in the scriptures is somebody is holding a burning piece of coal in their hand. It is hurting, it is burning. All they have to do is let go. But they don't want to let go. And they suffer. That is the whole message there. Yes, Sulata ji?
You had given one example, I think your experience only, where you had been to a cardiologist. You had seen them, a specialist who had given into smoking because they knew smoking is harmful, but still they couldn't, practice that.
Exactly. You have a very sharp memory. Yes, this was many years ago. I was very young and I was totally confused. And the first thing my intellect told me is, do you really want to get medicine from this guy? because because he claims to be a cardiologist, but he's himself smoking. Like, I wanted to just get up and run. But of course, there was kind of, he had credentials but he had other reasons. But yeah, you're right. The problem is, again, the intellect tells you that that guy had perfect intellect on what is right, what is not right, but the mind was not in his control. The mind was making excuses. The mind was giving into stuff. Very, very important.
There is Kabir's Doha, no, Guruji, you had told before. Man gaya to jane de, mat jane de tan. That is, don't.
मन गया तो जाने दे, मत जाने दे शरीर, बिन चिल्ला चढ़े कमान, किस बिद लागे तीर.
It can be stretched to the fullest, yeah. But if
so
there is no
that is a way of saying that, don't try to control the mind directly. Try to control. The mind cannot do anything if your body doesn't cooperate. The mind is saying, go eat that bad thing, but if your legs don't go towards that thing, if your hand doesn't pick up that thing, if your mouth doesn't swallow that thing, then you are safe. And continuously, if you keep doing that, then yes, the mind will get trained. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. Anything else anybody had wanted to bring? I hope this all made sense, right? I hope it didn't sound too technical or too much. It was technical, but I think it's very important and it will help us progress on the path. So, okay, I'll just maybe stop recording and